right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Distinguished visitors, honored guests. Our ceremony will begin in a few moments. Please take your seats. Can everybody out there hear me right? Whoa? At this time, we ask that you please silence all electronic devices. And as a note for our members attending today in uniform, this is an indoor event. Sir, what's happening? This is my last one. Yeah, I retire in August. So, I'm out. That's it. You need any good civilians? You need any good civilians? I'm working on it. I got hooks in the water. I'm not rushing. I'm not rushing. Good luck. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the retirement ceremony for Col Scott Pendley. This ceremony marks an end of a long, faithful, and honorable career. I am Chief Master Sergeant Jim Canna, your narrator for today's event. Throughout today's ceremony, you will be given various cues to stand and be seated at the appropriate times. As a reminder, during the national anthem, our civilian guests should place their right hand over their heart. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the ruffles and flourishes, presentation of the colors, the singing of our national anthem by Captain Andrea Pongras, and the invocation given by Chief Master Sergeant Christopher Hofrichter, United States Air Force, retired.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Relax, everybody. In the New Testament book of 2 Timothy, in chapter 4, we see the Apostle Paul providing final instructions to Timothy, who he's ordained to carry out the ministry of preaching the gospel. He tells him to always be sober-minded, to endure suffering, and to fulfill his ministry. Paul then informs Timothy that his departure has come and that he's fought the good fight, he's finished the race, and he's kept the faith. Colonel, you've answered the call while maintaining sobriety of mind. You've endured suffering through long deployments and time away from family. You fulfilled your ministry of leading from the front, guiding the mighty 305th Maintenance Group with deliberate focus, serving with integrity for the past 32 years. You will be missed, sir. You fought the good fight, and you finished the race, and yeah, you've kept the faith. And may you find peace and joy in retirement. And may God continue to use you mightily in service to Him in the years ahead. Godspeed, sir. Pray with me, won't you? Almighty Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather to honor Col Scott Pendley on the occasion of his retirement from the United States Air Force after 32 years of faithful service to this great nation. A leader amongst airmen, we thank you for the heart of sacrifice and dedication you've imparted upon him, which were the determinants and the perseverance that has led him to this day. We lift up the Colonel's wife, Casey, the driving force behind this family, who's endured many lonely nights and sometimes months on end raising their daughter in his absence. We thank you for giving her a heart filled with compassion that's biased to bringing comfort to the infirmed and healing to the sick, a tough and often thankless job in which she has served you well. We lift up their daughter, Grace, the source of tremendous pride to her parents, whom you've imparted a passion for science and medicine, as well as equine sport, where by your hand she has excelled in the arena. May she honor you with the hard work demanded of her as a pathologist, and may you continue to use her to bring healing to others. Yes, thank you for these loved ones, O Lord, who've endured with him this call to service. Thank you for their strength and support of Colonel Pendley during his long and distinguished career. We lift up Colonel Pendley's mother and his father, whom you've called unto you, who gave him life and the tools to live as a man with integrity, and raised to be a leader amongst men and women. We thank you for his extended family, sister and nieces, his in-laws, of whom we are blessed to have join us today, and his lifelong friends present here, who've no doubt provided encouragement along the way. Bless each one of these, we pray. And now, Father, I humbly ask for your mighty hand to be upon Colonel Pendley, Casey, and Grace as they embark on this next chapter in their lives. I ask you to guide them on this path that you have them on. Bless them, O Lord, with health and prosperity, and may they honor you with the lives they will lead going forward from here, and may their very actions be to your glory. And finally, I ask your hand on this mighty nation, as it has been for the last 248 years. Continue to use us as a force for good in this world. Do not turn your back on us, O Lord, I pray. God bless the mighty warriors in this hangar who stand in the gap every single day. God bless this United States Air Force. May God continue to bless this great United States of America. Your will be done, O Lord, in all of it. And it is in your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Wow, how about that, huh? How about a nice round of applause for our national anthem singer, Captain Pongras. And if anybody was planning on going to services this weekend, I think we got it covered, because I think Father Chris over there took care of us all. So well done, Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, please join me in recognizing our official party, distinguished visitors, and honored guests attending today's ceremony. Our presiding officer, the Commander, Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex, Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, Brigadier General John Eberlin, and his spouse, Sherry. Our honoree, the former commander, 305th Maintenance Group, Col Scott Pendley, his spouse Casey, and their daughter Grace. Colonel Pendley's sister, Miss Maxine Stockton, and his niece Tracy Norwood. His niece Shayla Powell and her spouse Spencer. Colonel Pendley's father-in-law, Mr. Jim Mitchell. His brother-in-law, Mickey Mitchell, sister-in-law, Tiza, and nephew, Caleb. The Commander, Defense Logistics Agency, Aviation and Defense Supply Center, Richmond, Virginia, Brigadier General Chad Ellsworth, and his spouse, Nicole. Captain Kip Bradley, United States Air Force retired, and his spouse, Abby. The Honorary Commander, 305th Maintenance Group, Mr. Bob McLean. We would also like to recognize the following distinguished visitors and honored guests attending, but ask to please hold all applause until all have been introduced. The Commander, United States Air Force Expeditionary Center, Major General John Klein and his spouse Angie. The Deputy Commander, United States Air Force Expeditionary Center, Col Scott Wiederholt and his spouse Pam. The Commander, 305th Air Mobility Wing, Colonel Elizabeth Hanson and her spouse Jeremy. The Deputy Commander, 305th Air Mobility Wing, Colonel William Soto. The Command Chief, 305th Air Mobility Wing, Chief Master Sergeant Jeremy Swistak. The Commander, 305th Maintenance Group, Colonel Brian Mix. The Senior Enlisted Leader, 305th Maintenance Group, Chief Master Sergeant Christopher McClendon. The Commander, 305th Operations Group, Colonel Kevin White and his spouse Sandy. The Senior Enlisted Leader, 305th Operations Group, Chief Master Sergeant Andrea Cook. The Commander, 621st Contingency Response Wing, Colonel Jason Herring. The Command Chief, 621st Contingency Response Wing, Chief Master Sergeant C.T. Kirk. The Commander, 87th Air Base Wing, Colonel Anthony Smith and his spouse Denise. The Command Chief, 87th Air Base Wing, Chief Master Sergeant Michael Wynn. The Commander, 87th Mission Support Group, Colonel Robert Grimmett and his spouse Donna. The Commander, 87th Civil Engineer Group, Colonel Michael Stefanovic. The Senior Enlisted Leader, 87th Civil Engineer Group, Chief Master Sergeant Stephen Millard. The Commander, 514th Air Mobility Wing, Colonel Christopher Holland. The Command Chief, 514th Air Mobility Wing, Chief Master Sergeant Leonard Werner. The Commander, 514th Maintenance Group, Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Chernowski. The Deputy Commander, 514th Maintenance Group, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Matthew. And the Commander, 108th Maintenance Group, Colonel Denny File. I just need a drink real quick. I'm sorry, that was a lot of names. I apologize. All right. Very good. Also, a warm welcome to all commanders, senior enlisted leaders, first sergeants, brothers and sisters in arms, friends, family, our Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst partners, and guests from our local community who joined us today. Thank you very much for attending. Ladies and gentlemen, today you will witness a time-honored military tradition, the retirement ceremony. We are here to recognize the distinguished career of Colonel Pendley, who has faithfully and honorably served his country in the United States Air Force for 32 years. It is now my pleasure to welcome the presiding officer of today's ceremony, Brigadier General Eberlin.
Probably not tall enough for you. So before we get started, I want to apologize personally to everyone for bringing the heat and humidity from Georgia with us, because when we got here, it was almost like being back in Georgia. I'm glad we packed shorts and short sleeve shirts and flip-flops instead of what it's normally like up in this part of the country. Senior leaders, friends, family, thank you for being with us today as we celebrate 32 years of faithful and devoted service of Scott Pendley to our nation. And we celebrate the Pendley family's commitment to service and the defense of our nation. Thank you, Scott, for allowing me to officiate. I know you know many people, and I'm glad that you bestowed this honor upon me. It's an honor to know you, and I'm just tickled that I get the opportunity to do this today. So, Scotty Allen Pendley, that's what you'll see on his birth certificate, but I kind of gave him my own name when we were in officer training school, and it was Leroy. And he's always been Leroy to me. So if I say Leroy, it's interchangeable with Scott because sometimes I slip up. So Scott graduated from Lynn High School in Lynn, Alabama, less than 1,000 people in 1984. His graduating class had 32 people. It's a no red light town, as he describes it. The #1 song at the time was Prince, When Doves Cry, if anybody remembers that. Some of us more seasoned can remember that. I grew up in a small town, not as small as Lynn, but I will tell you that growing up in a small town, you learn accountability at a very early age. Because if you do anything, everybody knows everybody, and generally it makes it back home to your parents before you make it back home. And although he's a little follically challenged right now, I can testify that I've seen the pictures when he was in high school, and he had a full head of hair. The best way I can describe it between the now and then is if you've ever seen The Simpsons and looked at Homer today, and you think about Homer back when he was dating Marge with a full head of hair, that was Scott. Scott enlisted in the Air Force in 1992 at the ripe age of 26 years. He joined at the time, like many of us did, basically for the benefits. He joined as a guidance and control system specialist on the MH-53J Pave 03 helicopters. And his first assignment was at the hardship location of Hurlburt Field, Florida. During his 6 years as an enlisted airman, his performance was exemplary, and I know that's no surprise to anyone, but in his first enlistment, he was a basic military training honor graduate, a technical training honor graduate. He was promoted senior airman below the zone, squadron airman of the year, deployed, said the proudest time was flying from Italy to Bosnia in one of the MH-53Js and thinking what a beautiful place. But at the time, when you think about what was going on, it was a war-torn country, and a lot of the buildings showed the remnants of combat. He was also an Airman Leadership School Levito winner, which is the highest honor given to the #1 graduate at our Airman Leadership Schools. And he was also promoted to Staff Sergeant under the Stripes to Exceptional Performers Program. And it just so happened he was given the stripe, selected for officer training school, and it's no surprise to the selflessness of Scott Pendley, gave the stripe back, and it went to another airman who was promoted to technical sergeant that retired as a chief in the United States Air Force. But the most important thing during that assignment was meeting the real superstar in the Pendley household. Casey had just graduated from nursing school at the University of Alabama with a bunch of her nursing friends, and they were pushing it up in Destin, and I believe it was the boathouse because they took me there a little while back, and they all were looking for fun, and Scott was with a friend, and they met up, and they've been together ever since. But I just want to make this clear, your luck in dive bars is a lot better than mine. I just want to make that clear. So at the time he met Casey, he had a set of orders to South Korea. And because he was selected for officer training school, his set of orders for Korea were canceled, so off he was to officer training school. Obviously at this point, Scott is doing pretty good. This is where we walk into each other's lives at officer training school as we were assigned to the same flight, where 16 of us were all together going through basic officer training. It became obvious to me from the very beginning, Scott was an exceptional person and leader. He was even-keeled, could take a pounding better than most, and was well-liked and respected in our flight. Our lower flight commander, who was one of the students in our upper class responsible for our training, didn't care for me very much, and I can, it probably had something to do with I was a staff sergeant when I crossed over, and here was a civilian off the street that had only been acclimated to the military for about 3 years, or excuse me, 3 weeks, and he's telling me what the real Air Force is about. I remember one night at officer training school, I told Scott, I'm like, I don't know how much more of this I can take. And Scott pretty much gave me some counseling and said, you know, this needs to be water off a duck's back. You need to let this slide, and we need to finish this program together. And that's what I did. Scott excelled in OTS. He was our student squadron commander and picked me as his operations officer and de facto roommate. Can you say odd couple? Leroy had a propensity to burn the midnight oil. I did not. Literally, he would stay up all night studying, where my preferred method was to be in the bed by 20:30, well before lights out, and love the one you're with when it came to the examinations. I remember telling him repeatedly, You're not going to learn anything else between now and daylight. The hay's in the barn. You're going to do better on the test if you're well rested. Of course, he didn't listen. It wasn't all work at officer training school. We did have some fun. So we had weekend pass where we got to go off the base, and Scott invited me to go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama with him, or T-Town. Casey was living in Alabama in an apartment with one of her friends, so 3 of us went up to Tuscaloosa. But that morning when we were getting our permission slip signed from our flight training officer, who just so happened to be from Selma, Alabama, basically told Scott, okay, Mr. Pendley, you need to take Mr. Eberlin to Dreamland Barbecue. And this was well before all of the other Dreamland locations sprouted up across the United States. So we make it to Tuscaloosa, and the only thing I can describe it was like a ride through the woods to this nondescript looking house. It did not look like a restaurant. It had a screen door in front, and you walked in, and there's all these pictures of Alabama football, that Bear Bryant was all over the wall. And you walked up to order, and the first thing we get is like, how many slabs do you want? And I'm like, you talking about slabs of ribs? And then we're like, well, we started thinking, and he goes, okay, you look like a 3-slab group. And so the gentleman put our order in, brought him to the table, and it was like, you guys want light bread? And it was like, oh yeah. So he reaches his hand with no food service gloves, down in a loaf of bread, pulls out half a loaf and sits it on the table. It was a great time. Ribs, light bread, barbecue sauce, and Mickey's Big Mouth beers, malt liquor. So after that, we went out. Casey showed us T-Town and had a great time. So that weekend, I became close friends with Casey, and we've been tight ever since. On the drive back to Montgomery, I told Scott, I know one thing here. You've got to keep her. You need to marry her as soon as you can, or you need to have your head examined. And he did. We all managed to graduate from officer training school. The Pendleys got married and moved to Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, Scott's first duty station. During the period, Leroy graduated from the Aircraft Maintenance Officers course as a distinguished graduate and the top graduate in his class. He happened to be in the AMOC class behind me. It just so worked out. We graduated from basic officer training the same day, but my class, I guess, filled up faster, so he went to the class behind me. At Dover, he started out as a maintenance flight commander, which is the largest flight in any equipment maintenance squadron, and it has to deal with doing the ISOs on the airplanes, which is an overhaul inspection where you tear the aircraft down, inspect components, put it back together again, and give it back to the unit to fly. It's almost like being in a mini depot, and I will tell you that the flying units were on you all the time about overrunning days in ISO to get the aircraft back. He then went to the propulsion flight commander, which that's every motor on every aircraft in the wing. So there's a lot of interest in that too, and it's the biggest flight in the component maintenance squadron. So 2 flights, arguably the 2 most challenging and the 2 most demanding in the off-equipment maintenance environment, and then he finished up as Chief of Quality Assurance, which is, for lack of better words, those are the people that make sure we do the job right. I bet your peers really loved you. So this is what some of his leadership had to say. A dynamic young maintenance officer, my absolute finest maintenance group lieutenant. The most important thing, though, that happened while the Pendleys were at Dover, they welcomed Gracie into the world and rounded out the family. Gracie took her first steps, walked for the first time on September 11th, 2001. During this time, Scotty was also promoted to first lieutenant, and after a little over 3 years at Dover, the Pendleys PCS to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, where he was assigned as the officer in charge of the 71st Aircraft Maintenance Unit and got a taste of the F-15C model aircraft. It's also the first time flight line, and then you're going from a heavy maintenance aircraft environment to a fighter environment, and I will tell you that a fighter flight line is like running a 2-minute offense in football all day, every day. He performed outstanding. His leadership gets it done. Led 170 personnel supporting 12 F-15Cs to Operation Iraqi Freedom, produced 368 combat sorties for over 2,480 flying hours. His squadron commander at the time was a gentleman named Tyrone Strawn. And Lieutenant Colonel Strawn at the time had quite a reputation in our community, and it's the only time that Scott thought, you know, I might actually get fired out of this job. So after a tour in flight line maintenance, he went to be the maintenance operations officer, which is the number 2 in an aircraft maintenance squadron of the 1st Component Maintenance Squadron, where he was a squadron sergeant in the Lou Allen winter. He also was promoted to captain and competitively selected for the logistics management program at the Air Force Institute of Technology. And that is a very rigorous application process. You have to take what's the equivalent at the time. You had to get a certain score on the business school entrance examination. Your undergraduate GPA had to be at a certain level, and they only picked a handful out of all the applicants, because essentially the Air Force lets us go get a master's degree and get paid at our rank while we're pursuing the degree. So while he was at AFIT, he did very well. He finished with a 3.8 GPA in March of 2006. However, I was stationed at Langley at the time, and it was March, and Scott, I'd already graduated from AFIT. Scott and I did a high five because I had to go to Langley as my advanced academic degree follow-on. Scott was getting ready to go to his next assignment, but he walked, but he didn't technically graduate because his thesis hadn't been defended. And so I get a call from the middle of the night, and it's not from Scott, it's from Casey. And she's given me the 20 questions about the master's degree and the thesis and all that stuff, and they were in the middle of a PCS, so she had to do a lot of it alone while Scott hung back. And their next assignment, they went back home to Alabama to what's called the Air Force Logistics Management Agency. So early on, before Scott even had a chance to get his feet on the ground at the AFLMA, as it was called at the time, he finished his thesis in September of 2006 and was a full-fledged AFIT graduate. So while he was there, and the AFLMA was the research arm for the logistics for the A47 on the air staff, so you got a lot of big picture Air Force impacting logistics sustainment kind of problems that you had to do the analysis for. While he was there, he was the chief of the maintenance studies branch. He finished up as the maintenance and munitions operations officer, where he was number 1 of 7 majors and the number 1 of 19 project managers. And during this time, made major. If that thesis hadn't have been done, at the end of the FLMA, he was selected for squadron command at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska of the 703rd Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. Heavy metal. It pains me to say that. I was the commander of the F-22 Aircraft Maintenance Squadron at the same time. Being stationed with the Pendleys was one of the highlights of our time in the United States Air Force. We lived on the same street. We hung around the fire pit. While we were there, though, pretty early on in my tenure, the Pendleys had been there a year before we got there. We lost a C-17 in the wing. And Scott was the commander of that squadron, and I will tell you, that it is tough for a maintenance unit to go through that, tough for anybody. And so we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of different things, and they came out and his squadron wound up winning the Maintenance Effectiveness Award for Pacific Air Forces that year, even enduring a mishap. 6 weeks, well, it's probably 2 or 3 months after the C-17 mishap, my squadron lost an F-22. And so we spent a lot of time talking to each other, being good wingman to each other. And so, one of the things that I was, the most proud of during my time, the year Scott's unit was the small unit MEA winner for PACAF. My unit was the medium unit winner for the Maintenance Effectiveness Award. And it just is it's a testament to resiliency. But while I was there, we spent a lot of time around the fire pit. One night after a few cocktails, I let Leroy slip too many times, and Casey picked up on it. Gracie picked up on it and started calling him that. And I tell you to tell you how viral this thing has gone. Last night we were over at the Pendleys, and Casey's daddy is like, "Where's Leroy at?" And I'm like, I look around and go, "You too?" Scott had a wildly successful squadron command tour. He left Elmendorf to go downrange to Ali Asaleen, Kuwait, where he was the squadron commander of the 386th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. And I can tell you, having done it before, commanding in the AOR, you live and die by the air tasking order. If you can't meet the air tasking order in the maintenance business, you're going to be gone. Casey and Gracie were with us in Alaska. We played a lot of card games, dominoes, all kinds of things, cooked out, spent time together, and really enjoyed, being able to have another year with you two. While he was at Ali Asaleen, Scott was the #1 squadron commander in the wing. After 1 year at Ali Asaleen, he got his first taste of a major command staff at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, on the Air Mobility Command staff in the Directorate of Plans, Requirements, and Programs, which is where all the strategic planning, programming money, where you're looking years and years out to shape what the command is going to look like in the future, and you're putting the resources to it and building the roadmap for future combat capability. During this time, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel. His boss had this: #1 of 4 lieutenant colonels, #1 of 5 deputy division chiefs, handpicked for the 22nd Maintenance Group deputy commander at McConnell to stand up the first KC-46 main operating base. That came from his 2-star director. The one that BNR'd him was the AMCA-4 at the time, retired. Well, he was a 1-star at the time, but now we all know him as retired 3-star Warren Berry. And Scott was absolutely the right person for that job. So at McConnell, Scott excelled, no surprises. I've seen lots of records over my time in the service, but I've never seen a better stack on a 3-year period on a MXG deputy. Scott was the #1 lieutenant colonel and the #1 deputy commander in the wing. In fact, his wing commander said he was the best group deputy he'd seen across 3 wing commands, bar none. During this time, Gracie graduated from high school and moved to Tampa to attend the University of South Florida, and Casey and Leroy packed it up and headed to Northern Virginia for an assignment at the Pentagon. So at the Pentagon, Scott was the Mobility Air Forces and Special Operations Maintenance Branch. And I've dabbled in the personnel side of our business a few times. I'm the one that used to work the hire plan when I was a lieutenant colonel about people that we brought into those jobs up there. You've got to be a rock star to be successful in those jobs, because basically you're reporting on all the fleets in your portfolio, and you're working life cycle and sustainment planning and strategy for multiple fleets in your portfolio. Scott's portfolio, in this case, had 1,400 aircraft that he had to care for and make sure that the sustainment strategy was right. I got to hand it to you, though. You got credit for a Pentagon tour with only 1 year in the building. Well played, sir. So Scott left the Pentagon, went to Eisenhower, the artist formerly known as Industrial College of the Armed Forces, was promoted to colonel. No footnotes in the training report this time. Well done. Selected for Maintenance Group Command at Beale Air Force Base. An interesting thing happened between selection and showing up to Beale. Beale transitioned to an A-staff organization. So Scott went from Group Command on the CSL to being the A47 in the wing. He had to stand up an A47 organization in a wing from scratch. He had to deal with fleet health. He had to deal with sustainment. He also had to take on civil engineering and the infrastructure of the installation, where I will tell you, I didn't get exposed to that kind of stuff until I was an Air Base Wing Commander. You know, the only way you see that kind of stuff in Group Command is if you're in charge of a civil engineering group or you're in the civil engineering community. So it made him and rounded him out and made him a very, very good, sought-after officer. He was a pro. I know a lot of people that would have taken that situation and probably reacted different, but he embraced the opportunity and excelled. While Scott was at Beale, Scott and Casey were at Beale, Gracie graduated from the University of South Florida with a degree in biomedical sciences. You're one smart cookie. So that brings us to right here. 305th Maintenance Group, Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, New Jersey. During this time here, and most of us heard everything about how great Scott's done here in terms of his tour in this maintenance group. He was built for this job, no doubt about it, and I can think of no better place to cap off a career. He led a KC-10 to KC-46 transition. He led the group to the AMC Dedallion Award, which is the best maintenance unit in the command during his tenure. He was the #1 maintenance group commander in all of 18th Air Force. But I can tell you, one of the most impressive things that I saw on Scott's report, and it was not surprising, high emotional intelligence leader, perfectly balances accomplishing the mission and taking care of the people. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, that's Scotty Leroy Pendley in a nutshell. So looking back over Scott's 32-year Air Force career, you see a dedicated, loyal, resilient, and compassionate leader who consistently delivered the right results the right way. Anyone that knows this family, like many of us do, will tell you that Casey and Gracie were instrumental to Scott's success. Thank you both for your service, sacrifice, and support of Scott and our Air Force. No words that I can say will adequately convey the gratitude that we all have for you. Casey, thank you for the countless lives of our airmen that you've touched over the course of Scott's career, and personally, thank you for your friendship. There's no one that the Eberlin family loves more than the Pendleys. Scott, on behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for 32 years of faithful and devoted service. Thank you for your friendship. I can't tell you how grateful and thankful I am that we met and had the opportunity to serve together. If I needed anyone to talk to since we met, you would be at the top of the list at any time, day or night. I would pick the phone up and call. I can think of no one that better exemplifies our core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. You done good, brother. And I'm extremely proud to call you my friend. All the best to you and Casey as you turn the next page to the next chapter of your lives. keep the Panhandle warm for us. Thank you.
Thank you, General Eberlin. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as General Eberlin retires Colonel Pendley. Attention to orders. Department of the Air Force, Washington, D.C., Special Order Number AL000203, dated 23 October 2023, effective 31 October 2024. Colonel Scott Pendley, you are relieved from active duty, 305th Maintenance Group, Joint Base McGuire-Dix, Lakehurst, New Jersey, retired effective 1 November 2024, per Air Force Instruction 36-3203 and a grade of Colonel. Proceed to home of selection by order of the Secretary of the Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, General Eberlin will present the Certificate of Retirement and Presidential Letter of Appreciation to Colonel Pendley, which reads, Certificate of Retirement from the Armed Forces of the United States of America to all who shall see these presents, greeting. This is to certify that Colonel Scott Pendley, having served faithfully and honorably, is retired from the United States Air Force on the first day of November 2024. Signed, General David W. Alvin, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and Colonel Elizabeth A. D. Hanson, Commander, 305th Air Mobility Wing. Colonel Pendley, we are pleased to present you with a Certificate of Appreciation from the President of the United States, which reads, I extend to you my personal thanks and sincere appreciation of a grateful nation for your contribution of honorable service to our country. You have helped maintain the security of a nation during a critical time in its history with a devotion to duty and a spirit of sacrifice in keeping with the proud traditions of military service. Your commitment and dedication have been an inspiration for those who will follow in your footsteps, and for all Americans who join me today in saluting you for a job extremely well done. My best wishes to you for happiness and success in the future, signed Joseph R. Biden, Jr., Commander-in-Chief. Colonel Pendley also received certificates of appreciation from former Presidents Donald J. Trump, William J. Clinton, and George W. Bush. Colonel Pendley is also receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant David A. Flosey, which reads, I am proud to join your friends and family in congratulating you on your retirement from the United States Air Force. The achievements and contributions you have made throughout your career are indicative of the core values of our great service. Your retirement is well deserved, but your selfless contribution will be sorely missed. On behalf of all airmen, thank you for your faithful and devoted service to our nation. As this chapter in your life closes and a new one begins, I hope the years ahead are filled with more great memories and continued success. At this time, Mrs. Pendley, please join us on stage. Mrs. Pendley, We ask that you place this pin on your spouse's left lapel to symbolize his transition from active duty to retired status. In the future, each time Colonel Pendley wears his uniform or has business attire, this pin will serve to remind them all that he has served faithfully and earned his retirement. The pin indicates he is still a member of the Air Force, but now serves in retired status. Colonel Pendley, please wear this pin proudly on any occasion in which you may represent the Air Force. Mrs. Pendley, please remain on stage to receive your spouse's certificate. General Everlin will present Mrs. Pendley with a certificate of appreciation signed by General David W. Alvin, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And it reads, "In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents this certificate of recognition to Mrs. Casey Pendley for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service." Signed, General David W. Alvin, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and Colonel Elizabeth A.D. Hanson, Commander, 305th Air Mobility Wing. Mrs. Pendley is also receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. It reads, "On behalf of all Air Force airmen and their families, the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force presents his certificate to Casey M. Pendley. I join your spouse, family, and friends in thanking you for the numerous contributions and sacrifices you made in support of the United States Air Force. Your dedication gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service in defense of our nation." Signed, Chief Master Sergeant David A. Flosey. At this time, would Grace please join us on stage? That's right, Miss Grace. Come on up. Colonel Pendley would like to present his daughter with the Military Child Certificate, which reads, "Today, after completing 32 years of active Air Force service, your father has ended a career of honorable and faithful service to his country, and his efforts are sincerely appreciated. Such a rich and rewarding career reflects a strong commitment to the principles of freedom and democracy, and a belief that they must be upheld at any cost. That the type of total commitment is not possible without the full support of the entire family. Although you may never have had to carry out a military order or deploy into a hostile environment, your loyalty and steadfast support of your father's career can rightly be viewed as service to our country. That loyalty and dedication were significant sources of strength for your father during his arduous duty and exemplifies the highest traditions of patriotism. On behalf of a grateful nation, the Department of the Air Force, and the entire 305th Air Mobility Wing, I extend to you a sincere thanks and express our appreciation for a job well done." Signed, Colonel Elizabeth A.D. Hanson, Commander, 305th Air Mobility Wing. Next, in honor of Colonel Pendley's 32 years of service, members from the Joint Base Honor Guard will perform the flag folding ceremony. For almost 250 years, the American flag has been the symbol of our nation's unity, as well as a source of pride and inspiration for millions of citizens. Born on June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress determined that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternating between 7 red and 6 white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. Between 1777 and 1960, the shape and the design of the flag evolved into the flag presented before you today. The 13 horizontal stripes represent the original 13 colonies, while the stars represent the 50 states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardiness and valor. White signifies purity and innocence. And blue represents vigilance and perseverance and justice. Traditionally, a symbol of liberty, the American flag has carried the message of freedom and inspired Americans both at home and abroad. In 1814, Francis Scott Key was so moved at seeing the stars and stripes waving after the British shelling of Baltimore's Fort McHenry that he wrote the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. In 1892, the flag inspired Francis Bellamy to write the Pledge of Allegiance, our most famous flag salute and patriotic oath. In 1969, the American flag was flown in space when Neil Armstrong planted it on the surface of the moon. Today, our flag flies on constellations of Air Force satellites that circle our globe, and on the fin flash of our aircraft in harm's way in every corner of the world. Indeed, it flies in the heart of every airman who serves our great nation. The sun never sets on our U.S. Air Force, nor the flag we so proudly cherish. Since 1776, no generation of Americans has been spared the responsibility of defending freedom. Today's airmen remain committed to preserving that freedom that others won for us for generations to come. By displaying the flag and giving it a distinctive fold, we show respect to the flag, express our gratitude to those individuals who fought and continue to fight for the freedom at home and abroad. Since the dawn of the 20th century, airmen have proudly flown the flag in every major conflict on lands and skies around the world. It is their responsibility, our responsibility, to continue to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and freedoms that we have as Americans that we enjoy today. The United States flag represents who we are. It stands for the freedom we all share and the pride and patriotism we feel for our country. We cherish its legacy as a beacon of hope to one and all. Long may it wave. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, and Colonel Pendley as well, I now present to you for the first time Col Scott Pendley, United States Air Force, retired.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Probably like some of the rest of you who have been through this and are now on the other side, some in just the last few days, I can see in the audience. I can tell you I've watched this probably hundreds of times, like you, all of you. It feels a little different when you're on this side of it, just a little bit. So preview of coming attractions for some of those and some of the closer rows toward the front there, just like you know. Since it's such a cool day and a nice breeze, we could just hang out all afternoon, couldn't we? My family and I are so honored that you would join us today. And we're humbled that you would come out on a steamy New Jersey July afternoon and hang out with us. And some of you must love me, or you just want to make sure I really do this, because some of these folks have been through this twice today. And I really... you've gotten soaked, not once, but twice, so I appreciate that very much. And again, you honor us with your presence. We're celebrating, and this is a celebration. It's not a sad thing. I went to one of these recently, and I heard that phrase, and that really is, I think, the way you got to keep that perspective, is it's a celebration of one chapter, and you're just moving to another. Because if you start using some of those other words, I'm going to get some of that memory dust in my eyes and get all wrecked up, and then we're in trouble then for sure. So I got to try to not do that. But this is a celebration of what has been a really fast 32 years. I know that sounds crazy to say, unless you're again on this side of it. As I transition from active duty to the control, I'm coming under new management. Soon to be known something along the lines of the Casey Pendley Work Release Program or something like that. Probably something along those lines. You know, when you're on a work release program and it doesn't work out, they kick you back, you know, to the jail, or I don't know where she's going to kick me back to, you know, GS something, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can keep the wheels on the RV and the chicken safe in the coop or something like that, and I can keep my job and stay out of trouble. Casey and I are very happy. Our daughter Grace was able to join us. Grace, we love you so much and so proud of you. My sister Maxine, goodness gracious, love you, sis. Niece Tracy, Shayla, Spencer, Jim on his road trip. I'm curious to see where he's going back. He drove up instead of flying from Alabama, and so he's going to take a little road trip home. Mickey, Tisa, and Caleb coming out from Texas. I really appreciate you coming. I know you're busy. You got a lot of responsibility, Mick, so I appreciate you taking some days and coming up here to share this great day with me, Casey, and Gracie. Speaking of travel, we got some friends that are like family, I think we said earlier, right? General Eberlin and Sherry, we've been knowing them since 1998. That's a minute. And just note to self, again, and some of you that's considering this in the next few years, if you ask somebody to be your retirement official and they know you really well, you get what you get, you know. They put some of your laundry out in the street that maybe you'd rather left in the laundry bag, but here we are. So just a note for your planning purposes. But I'm honored that you came from Warner Robins and brought the weather with you, I guess. But we're still glad that you came up. You honor us by doing that, because I know you are super busy. You got a lot going on. Obviously, being OTS roommates, 26, soon to be 26 years ago. We started in May and finished in August. We've been on the same path, but he's obviously been in the HOV lane. He's been moving a little faster than me, because that guy right there has been promoted as fast as you can get promoted, and that's why he's sitting in that position he's in, and he's not done yet. So as long as Sherry will put up with that and him, they might not be off the ride just yet, so hang on. Ellsworths, Chad and Nicole, lieutenants together at Dover. Dover, sometimes you live in base housing, sometimes you live off base, but we lived in base housing. We were all a bunch of new lieutenant knuckleheads, prior enlisted folks, having kids, and it was special. We still have all of those friends from that little neighborhood and that backyard, kind of like some of us share backyards now. It was that kind of thing, and it was just special. Sometimes it just clicks, and we've made special friends, and we appreciate you coming up. Chad's just putting on stars and taking on a lot of new responsibility. He was in the seat a day or two and said, "Hey, I got to go to Scott Pendley's retirement." And I don't know who you had to sell that on or convince to let you get out, slip away, but I appreciate you doing it. That just probably means your stack is larger when you get back, but I appreciate it. Kip and Abby, next door neighbors in Ohio, who have become like family as well, and they've already beat us to the punch. They've still got a house in Manassas, but they've already bought a house down in Gulf Breeze, so they're trying to beat us to the beach. We're going to see who can get there first. I think they're going to beat us, but we're not so far behind you. Keep the sun shining and the beverages cold, Kip. We'll be down there soon enough. Everybody else that's joining us today, I know the people sitting in these chairs are busy. General Klein, Angie, you got a little bit going on too. Temporary lodging. You're going to be back over here on Friday for some for your own activities. Goodness gracious, thanks for coming by. We're honored that you make the time. Colonel Wiederholt, thank you, Pam. You got plenty going on too, hosting parties and ramrodding events, and so thank you very much. Colonel Hanson and Jeremy, another one. You got your own stuff going on tomorrow, and then it's off to Rhode Island, right? Pretty quickly after. So thanks for making time. You honor us with your presence. All the other wing commanders, and there's a bunch of you in the crowd, command chiefs, Colonel Smith and Denise, neighbors across the street, thanks for coming. I know, again, your schedule's been full because I've already seen you at 2 or 3 other events with some other folks. So to make the time, Stacy, thanks for coming. Make everybody, what do you say but thank you? I don't know what to say. Kevin, Sandy, Chief Cook, Mike, Joe Ternosky, Denny, everybody, thanks for coming. You don't know what that means to us, because again, you could be somewhere else. This is an optional thing, so I appreciate it. Welcome also, because I missed you this morning, Bob. I owe you 2 introductions, because my honorary commander, I had it in my notes, and I got rolling, and I totally missed Mr. McLean. Bob's been a great honorary commander. The Blue Claws general manager, so if you need some good entertainment, go over and watch some minor league baseball. He'll hook you up. They got a nice, and most of you I'm sure have been over there, they got a really nice facility, and you got a great operation going over there, Bob. Thank you so much for coming. Monica, previous honorary commander, I see you sitting back there. You honor us with your presence today too. Thank you so much for coming out. I know you got other places and other events and volunteer work that you're doing that keeps you busy, so thank you for making some time for us. Other commanders, chiefs, first sergeants. I see Jordan in the crowd again, not once but twice. Left, came back from Germany, and he's been at both events today. Group commanders, I know you got a lot going on. We got some recently unemployed group commanders, Rob and Donna, sitting right there. Maybe you got more time than some of the rest of them do, but you're just hanging out waiting for the free food. I think so, Rob and Donna. Rob's doing. Wow, 32 years. That's just crazy to say when I say that out loud again. 3 days on the 13th, 3 days from today, will be 32 years. So when I retire on 1 November, it'll be 32 years, 3 months, and 18 days. But that's what who's counting? That's what the piece of paper says. But goodness gracious, it feels like it went by in about 32 minutes. Because every day here, these last 2 years, I have not had a boring day yet. And I haven't had many boring days, as most of you, if you do this career of service that we do, there's not a whole lot of boring days. There's something to do all the time. Somebody needs our candor. Somebody needs our leadership. Somebody needs our loving hand, and somebody needs a boot in the you-know-what sometimes. And you got to balance all that out and figure what works and hope you navigate it the best you can and get people better on the other side. Hopefully I've done that, moved the ball a little bit forward at least. Again, General Eberlin, thanks for officiating today. John, we consider you like family. You and Sherry, Brock, Courtney, all of you. It's like our kids, and Gracie's like yours, other than that slight, nickname you've given her that stuck all these years. Because when she picked up on it, she was like a bulldog on a bone. She's never let off that. It's not Dad very often, it's Leroy. And my car is, what's this light on my car? Leroy, can you help me? That kind of stuff. But you're still cool in my book. I still love you. But now, see, she got my father-in-law doing it, and everybody. Now it's just everywhere. It's like the plague. It's all over the place. But I guess I could be called worse names than have been, so I guess it's okay. But Casey and I are proud of your career. You're obviously doing well, and you continue to do so. So we appreciate it once again. For the team that put this on, I know I talked about it this morning with this 2-for-1 special we got going today. Man, it's some work, especially when it's hot, and rearranging chairs and making signs and lining up things to get all that done. It's a lot of work. Captain Williams, Nadia, Jackie, all the setup and tear down team. Goodness, it takes a village to make one of these things go. So I appreciate your help with this, helping out Casey over at the Tommy B's, where hopefully we'll all go and it'll be a little cooler. Well, I'll get us there in just a minute. Just hang on. But I can't thank you enough. You guys have been fantastic. I really appreciate you. Camp Congress, did you say, Andrea, did you stay around? Thank you so much. So the first time, Andrea used to be my exec when she was Lieutenant Congress before she went off to do big things and travel the world over on the CR side. The first time I heard her sing at one of these, I knew that's who I wanted to have sing the national anthem at my retirement. So I'm so glad you're in country long enough to do that. So thank you so much. I hope to catch up with you later. Chief Retired Hofrichter, once again, bringing the heat on the invocation. He always brings it strong, and I appreciate your vim and vigor with that. And you do your homework, and you don't just come up here and shoot it off the cuff, and I appreciate that preparation. I do. Our proffer, again, if you weren't here this morning, part due. He prof this morning, changed uniforms, and he's out here sweating with the oldies once again with me this afternoon. So he's doing it twice. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you. So most often you see these events kind of go in a chronological order, right? Going back to the day, some of that stuff, and he's already put some of my laundry out in the street again, so I'll save some of that. But I often see when you do that, if you start at home and you start with family, again, you get some of that memory dust in your eyes, and you get off track, and I got the quiver lip the rest of the time, and we never get through this. So I'm gonna have to go in reverse just a little bit and hope I get to that part and I've still got it together. I hope so. Current location. My goodness, this place is busy. I haven't had a boring day yet because we do stuff that matters. Goodness gracious, this place, we are touching lives around the world every day. And that's the 305th, that's the 87th, that's all aspects of this joint base. And it takes all of us working together to get that done. Rob Grimmett and Donna, obviously, being the Mission Support Group commander, our portfolios, and we talked about this the other day, intertwine a lot. And we got different bosses. But all this stuff has to come together to get this mission done, this global reach thing that we do, right? And we've walked dogs and solved lots of problems and been around in New York City and getting calls and solving problems, and that's just what you do, right? Squadron commanders are tight and get things done. Group commanders tight. Wing commanders. Communication and relationships. Communication and relationships. That's how you make this stuff go, and that's how it's got to continue to be. So I think all of my partners, Dan, I see you sitting back there. Sorry I missed your retirement. Communication and relationships. That's how this world works. But again, the complexities of this place is unmatched in most cases. This is a lot going on at this place, and I've loved every minute of it. It's been fantastic. My work-life balance remains out of balance, Casey would tell you, but wow, it's been a great ride, and it's been really fast. 1,700 people doing things, and we got them on the road around the world somewhere every day. And they're bringing an open hand of hope to our allies, and they're bringing a closed fist of hurt to those that are on the other side of that. And we bring both of those, and we do it well. Millions of gallons of fuel and thousands of passengers in sorties, and the numbers just go on, and your eyes roll back in your head. But they make it look easy. The people in this maintenance group, and this wing, this joint base, make it look pretty easy most days. Let me tell you, it ain't easy. But they make it look that way because they're good at it. We've got Guard and Reserve professionals that help us do that. And we thank you for your candor, your cooperation, your teamwork, your communication and relationships for the 514th and the 108th. I can't thank you enough. It's been an amazing 2 years. But like every other location that we've ever served, the big thing, you got the mission numbers, and again, we can quote those all day. It's the relationships you make, the friends that you make that become like family. And we've done it again here just like everywhere else. And that's a testament to my social chair, Casey Pendley, sitting right there in the corner, because without her, I probably wouldn't have any friends at all. She keeps us all connected and going. So I'd be a hobbit somewhere under a mushroom living probably by myself if it wasn't for her. She keeps me connected and going. So, babe, I love you. I appreciate you. But we got names like Grimmett's, Normans, Hansons, Burks, Smiths, Wallingas, Mocks, Sotos, so many more that we consider friends that are like family. And we appreciate that. And that's what keeps you going. And I'm going out as I wanted to. I always wondered, how in the heck do you know when it's time to get off this ride? Because you just do it. You just go every day, and you get up, and you don't have a lot to worry about. You put on the same thing every day. I don't have to worry about what color tie I'm wearing unless we're in Eisenhower School or something like that, right? You just put on the same thing, and you just go do. And you got meetings to do, and you got people with stuff going on, and you just go fix it and go do it. How do you know how to get off the ride? You just do. I think it's just, I knew it was just time. I just do. And I wanted to go out like this. I had an opportunity. I could go back to the cornfields of Illinois and do some great things that are important to do. I didn't want to retire out of a cubicle. I wanted to see that picture right there from the stage. That's what you want to see if you're a maintenance group commander, and I'm guessing most ops group commanders. When you retire, you want that view with some air power and some port dog stuff that makes this thing go. That's what I wanted to see right there, and that's what I'm seeing, so I'm okay. Prior to this position, mentioned Beale. We'd never been to Beale, never been to Northern California, hadn't worked high altitude reconnaissance, didn't know anything about U-2s. Why in the world would you send me out there? And then along the way, like John said, I got to be the quasi-group commander in the A-47 and all the fun that comes along with that. I sure have a better appreciation of the MSG portfolio, and we should all have a better understanding and appreciation of that. CE, Mike, goodness gracious. Yeah, we're flying airplanes, but if the CDC's down because we got foot and mouth disease, stuff ain't working. It ain't happening. So Seek first to understand and then to be understood, Dr. Stephen Covey would say in one of his 10 rules, right? Back to that communication and relationships. If we're seeking to understand each other a little more, I think we'll be a little better off. And I would encourage all of us to continue to do that. But out in California, we saw Yosemite and some just absolutely has to be God-created given places, right? It was special. U-2 spy plane, just so if you haven't been around some of those things and high-altitude reconnaissance, it's got the most advanced sensor packages that you can imagine. It can go out and do some pretty cool stuff. And we check the fuel with a dipstick. It's like the Jetsons meet the Flintstones, if you know those things I'm talking about. And you're like, what is this thing? You got chase cars and people jumping on the wings and pogo, landing gear. It's just nuts. But it's interesting. So it was cool in a lot of ways. We got to see some things we hadn't seen. Oh, by the way, we made some of those lifelong friends, the Fukumotos, the Welcomes, the Montels, Underwoods, Hips, Rowans, Kellets, all those type of folks. That's what keeps you going. Before that, District of Columbia, I somehow or another escaped velocity at the Pentagon after a year. Somebody said that maybe I should go to Eisenhower to school. Man, I'm old. I probably wouldn't have sent me to school, but I was proud they did because it was a great experience. But we got the Skis, the Satowskis, the Joe Stangles, and some of those folks that I worked with in the Pentagon and got to go to school with. More friends on more people on the Christmas card list. That's what matters. You want more Christmas cards at the end of the year going on the door, on the wall, or wherever you put it. Before that, 3-year tour out at McConnell. When we were at Scott on the staff, and we've had a couple assignments, and maybe this has happened to you, maybe not. Oh yeah, it's in the bag. The fat lady's warming up. She's singing, you're going. We're going to Hurlburt Field, work with Colonel Leone, who was our deputy at Alaska. Done deal. General Barry's like, not so fast. Why don't you go out to McConnell and be the maintenance group deputy? Casey had a little memory mist in her eyes there on that day. McConnell Air Force Base was a fantastic assignment. It rivals this, and it's the only place that we've been to that probably the community support is even stronger at McConnell than it is here, which is hard to beat because this place is pretty good. Don't prejudge any of these locations, and most of you in this crowd have been doing this for a minute and you know what I'm talking about, but McConnell was fantastic. Our next door neighbors, Terry Graham, first time I saw her I was like, well, that looks like my sister. She was like my sister reincarnated, and they've become great friends that we hold dear today. It's just crazy how this works. Gracie rode horses, competed all over the Midwest, did a lot of crazy cool things. And I think we had a pretty good time. I know we made some great friends. The Grahams, the Izzies, the Felices, the Millers, the Crabtrees, the Thompsons. It just keeps going. Before that, Illinois and the AMC staff. First time for me on a MAJCOM staff. And I was fortunate to work in A58. Most of us, if you're a maintainer, you're a logger, you're in A4. We don't get a lot of time in the 5, right, Kevin White? Because Kevin was up there living the dream in the 5. Doing strategic basing and stuff when I was there. Jordan Norman was there living the dream with me. It's crazy how we all kind of work back together, right? It gave me some different perspective. It really did. I better understand now how we never get anything on time or under budget, ever, because of all that stuff that goes on. It's just ridiculous. But we have our top 10 list, and we try to get some things funded and get it done. That was a decade plus ago, so I'm probably at fault for some of the KC-46 stuff. All three of us are somehow that was going on, because we were trying to figure out how you're going to maintain this thing, how you're going to, supply it, lay in parts, the tech data, the training aids, and we're still having problems with all that. We're struggling with all those things. So, Kevin, it's your fault. Jordan, it's your fault. Once again, professionals and friends. Coming out of there, Jordan, Kevin, Geraldine Irwin, Joe Malott, Chuck Whitehead, Tom, Walt, Alan Berry, all these people again that I still have as, whenever I do look on the Facebook list, they're still there, so they haven't unfriended me yet. So that's the kind of stuff that matters. Before that, the adventure, I would say one of our grandest adventures was going to Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. We went from, Alabama, 18 days across the country, the Black Hills, Mount Rushmore, all the family vacation moments, where you're looking out over the Grand Canyon when he does that kind of move, if you know the move I'm talking about it's that kind of stuff, but it was fantastic. What an amazing, amazing place. And if you haven't been there, you gotta go. But also we got to see some old friends. We got to be squadron commanders with the Bells. Now, General Bell, Hill, LC commander. The Eberlins were there. The Hanettes were there, who we've been stationed with a few times in our Light family. It was a grand adventure indeed. So when I list names like the Leons, the Johnsons, the Zamoras, the Jacobuses, we'd never skied before. Coming from northern Alabama, don't do a lot of skiing, in case you didn't know. Never done any. They got their own ski hill at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. So we were learning to ski, and I remember French fries and pizza. Gracie's in the ski team, zooming down the hill 1,000 miles an hour, and me and Casey looked like we're 100 years old trying to wobble down the hill. French fries and pizza, right? The Bells, Eberlins, Hanettes, again, friends for life. Assignments down at the Logistics Management Agency at Gunner Annex. They gave us a chance to get close to family and see my father before he passed and do some different things. Life just has a funny way of working out. Affit rented a house from yours truly, that guy right over there. Like you said, I'm going to do an incentive flight on the F-15. It got delayed. I know that's surprising to you. We had maintenance delays. That doesn't never happen. But it delayed a little bit. And we were going to go over to the club. And we had never, I don't think, eaten at the club at Langley. We went over to the club to get some lunch. Who do I run into? That guy who had already just graduated from Affit and just happened to have a house to rent right next to the Bradleys. So Casey and him on some bar agreement, draw up, here's what it looks like and here's what it's going to be, and we agreed on the bar napkin at the Langley club we're going to rent a house from the Eberlins in Ohio, and that's how that went. Langley was I had a ton of fun working fighters. I enjoy the big boys, but like General Eberlin said, it's different. It is hair on fire. If you can schedule that and keep the scow straight and do all the stuff that you got to do, especially with the dark grays, and I never got a chance to work those, but if you can do that, you can hang in most any place. And so while I was rolling out to Red Flag, and I was going to Tabuk when the war was kicking off, and going to some of those other cool places, Miss Pendley over there had little Grace, about 2 or 3 years old, and so her experience, she would tell you at Langley, is a little bit different than mine. We got through that as well. First officer assignment at Dover, again, I already said, man, you can't ask for a better scenario where you've got half a dozen couples that are your backyard neighbors like we have now in base housing, which is why that is important, I think, to do those things, because we develop relationships that we can call each other on a moment's notice and ask, hey, can you help me out with this? And they're going to drop what they're doing, and they're going to help you. They're going to get it done, and I appreciate it. Casey and I always joked around at Dover. My group commander at Dover when we got there was Don Stokes and his wife Carolyn. And Don Stokes, man, I thought he was an old guy. He had hair like this. He had glasses he had to use to read, like most of us do now. I was like, man, that guy's old as Methuselah. He'd be at a brief, and he was tough. And if you didn't have your you-know-what in a sock, he'd ask you to leave and come back when you get it figured out. Back in the a little more harsh days. And Casey and I always joked that, well, if we stay in this game long enough, we're going to turn into Don and Carolyn Stokes. And I'll be doggone if we didn't turn into Don and Carolyn Stokes. I got no hair, need cheaters to read, and I don't know, you'd have to ask Chief and Dom and them if I'm that kind of jackass at the meeting. I'm not always that bad. But sometimes I'm not happy with the answers that folks are coming with. Maybe they're not as prepared as they need to be. It's just crazy. Some of that stuff, you say, well, we're going to turn into them, and I'll be dogged if we didn't just turn right into Don and Carolyn Stokes. But there's worse people that we could have turned out to be. Ellsworths, Powells, Olmeyers, Knobs, Rimbes, McCurdy's. That's a laundry list of names from Dover that people we still care about and hopefully still care about us. First officer assignment. So Casey Pendley, she came in, I like to joke, when I bumped into her at that fine establishment, the Boathouse, if you've ever been to Destin along the harbor, you know what I'm talking about, because it's about half the size of this stage, maybe 3/4. Some of those places with some dollar bills and women's undergarments, you know, stapled to the ceiling. Fine establishment. And sometimes you just never know what's coming. It just happens. And it just happened. But Casey came in when it was Senior Airman Pendley, and the checkbook. Anybody not know what a checkbook is? I know some of them. Oh, what's a checkbook? You actually write stuff out and do that? I just click Venmo and flash it and all these other things. Yeah, checkbook. You look it up, Google it, Caleb. It's a thing. The checkbook was a little leaner back then, so she's seen it from the other side. And John mentioned, or General Eberlin mentioned, we'd been dating for a little bit, and I had orders to Korea. And I don't know if I'd made a good enough impression on her for her to hang on while I was going to Korea for a year. It was feeling a little iffy. So OTS probably saved me in a lot of ways because it canceled my Korea assignment and kept me in the good graces of my future employer over there, Casey Pendley. I didn't know how much fun I was having. I was an enlisted maintainer coming at 26 years old from a town of about 600 people, had no interest in the military whatsoever. My brother had been drafted into Vietnam, wounded in action, shot down into a helicopter trying to get back. It's a wonder he made it out of there alive. I had no interest in the military. Life has a funny way of taking you down some paths sometimes that you don't expect. At 26, I had been to school, had an associate's degree, a lot of credits, but I didn't have a lot of degrees. And I'm the AmeriGas guy driving the truck and delivering gas to your propane tank. Propane, you know, you talked about the other cartoon, so if you saw the King of the Hill, Hank Hill, propane and propane accessories, well, that was me once upon a time with a little bit longer hair in the back. You know, I was talking, when I was getting to this part and trying to think how I would walk through it, I saw something that estimates each of us will meet 80,000 people. Chief, you and I were talking about this the other day, 80,000 people in your lifetime. I don't know if that's military folks because, you know, we're seeing 200, 300, 400 people at a chunk. But if you're seeing 3 folks a day on an average week over a 70-plus year life, you're going to meet 80,000-ish people. And you have no idea how those people are going to impact your lives or you're going to impact them. You just got to be yourself and got to be ready to do some good. Because I was working as the AmeriGas guy, trying to figure out how in the world am I ever going to get back to school and get on and do something. Buddy Guy, not the blues guitarist, but Buddy Guy working at AmeriGas had gotten out as a tech sergeant. He'd been in the Air Force. He's like, man, a lot of days I think I should have probably stayed and made it to 20. You should go talk to the recruiter. They got a lot of programs. Maybe you can get some college money, get back on track, do some stuff. I went and talked to the recruiter, and I like what they said. And look here, 32 years later, here we are, chatting with you fine people. You just never know how that's going to go. You can always have a chance to impact somebody's life just that much, even if you don't know it at the time. So always be a force for change, for positive. I was so naive, like I said earlier, coming from that grand old town of 600 people with no red light, and it's still about 600 people with no red light. Apparently they like it that way. I enlisted at 26, didn't have a guaranteed job. They put me in guidance and control. Okay, thanks. You're going to Hurlburt Field. Thanks. You're going to work helicopters. The Air Force has helicopters? I didn't even know the Air Force had helicopters. That's how green I was. Coming from, first time I ever flew in an airplane was going to basic training. Started from not much. but here we are somehow. I continue to prove it's better to be lucky than good, because I've been lucky to know a lot of people just like you who have helped me out along this path. But I had people at Herbert Field that cared about me, back to that 8,000 people. Chief Master Sergeant Patricia Finney, my first squadron chief. She's still the Chief Master Sergeant that I measure all Chief Master Sergeants by. She got it. She took care of people when we came back off the road on some of those trips to not such glamorous places. They'd have a cold keg out on the back patio, things we don't do as much of anymore, but they'd be out on the line checking on you, seeing how you're doing, and welcoming you back, making sure you're being successful. She's at my ALS graduation. My supervisor, Master Sergeant John Capara, at my ALS graduation. So when we go to ALS graduations and the supervisor's there and you're there, that's important. It may not seem like it at the time. People remember that stuff. I do. And most of you probably remember that too. That's the kind of difference you can make with people. Chief Finney, Master Sergeant John Capara, friends Wes Pike, Brian Hilton, Jason O'Connor, just to name a few. Goodness, I hope to catch up with some of those folks again, because I still treasure them as friends. I know it's hot and we got places to go. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, I think, is attributed with saying, "We live only in the present, a fleet-footed moment. The rest is lost and behind us, or ahead of us, may never be found." If you don't like the path you're on, change it. If somebody's having to struggle with the path they're on, help them change it. Make it better. Be the change for somebody else, even if you can't do it for your own self. And these past 32 years, I hope I've helped a few people on the path to being a little bit better. I know they've sure helped me on my path. Thanks to my family and friends. I love you and appreciate you more than you can ever imagine. To everybody here, I'm humbled you chose again to join us in the sauna this afternoon. You're probably wet in places you'd rather not be wet. I appreciate you hanging on. But if you join us over at Tommy B's, I think the air is a little cooler over there, and the beverages will help with some of these conditions. And we got some food too, so hopefully you'll come over and join us. Again, I'm humbled that you would take time out of your day, because that is the one commodity you can't make more of and you can't get back, and that's your time. So if you've given that to us today, I appreciate it. So please join us, hopefully over at Tommy B's. Thank you so much for coming today.
Sir, just as a reminder, my fault, you know, he was like really in the moment and everything. I forgot to remind him about the flowers. Right, and I just want to thank you, sir, for keeping that short. I really appreciate that. That was probably one of the shortest retirement speeches I've ever seen. That was awesome. Any reattacks by any chance? Any reattacks? Oh, the marshmallow story. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. So again, you know, Colonel Pendley, just from me to you real quick, and I just want to say something real quick. It actually has been a real pleasure and honor to work with you side by side. I've had a lot of RegAF commanders come through here, and you're definitely top of the list. So thank you for being a great TFI partner. Just like a lot of the TFI partners that we've got in here. We've got a really good family here in McGuire. And been a pleasure and honor to serve with you. So again, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of the Air Force song and the departure of the official party. The words of the Air Force song could be found on the back of your program. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the retirement ceremony culminating Colonel Pendley's distinguished Air Force career. Please join us at Tommy B's Community Center at 1630. Oh, he blew past that. For the official retirement reception, the Pendley family thanks you very much for joining us. Have a great Air Force Day.